Hola muchachos, ¿qué tal? Buenos días. Aquí tienen el horario para hoy, miércoles, el 20 de abril. You did have homework due for today. It was the guided workbook pages 137 to 138. Your learning targets for today are to talk about what you used to be like when you were little, and using the imperfect tense to do that, along with the key vocabulary. Your warm-up for today is a fill-in-the-blank warm-up. Indicate the correct imperfect conjugation of the verb provided in parentheses according to the context of the sentence. For example, the verb being used for this first example is the verb llevar, to bring. Mi abuelo me llevaba al parque para jugar con los patos. My grandfather used to bring. Él me llevaba al parque para jugar con los patos. Used to take me to the park to play with the ducks. Mis amigos y yo montábamos en bici por nuestro barrio. My friends and I used to ride. That would be the verb montar in the nosotros form. Used to ride bikes around our neighborhood. So conjugate the verbs provided in parentheses there in the imperfect according to the subject that's provided at the very beginning of each sentence. All right, for the rest of class, we are going to go over the notes of irregular verbs in the imperfect on page 196. The good news is that there are only 3 irregular verbs in the imperfect, and they are the verbs ir, ser, and ver. That's it. Only those 3 verbs are irregular in the imperfect. Ir meaning the verb to go. So if you want to say I used to go, yo iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, and iban. Here are conjugations of the verb ir, to go, in the imperfect. Ser is the verb to be, and this is what you guys are using for your project to say what you used to be like. You'd begin with yo era. The title of your project about your childhood is De niño, de niña, ¿cómo eras tú? What did you used to be like when you were little? When you're talking about your family or other members of your family, or your favorite subject when you were little, you're using the third person singular of the verb ser. Él, ella, usted era. Nosotros éramos, and ellos, ellas, ustedes eran. The verb to be in the imperfect. Ver is the verb to watch, or the verb to see. Veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veían. Only 3 verbs that are irregular in the imperfect. Ir, the verb to go. Ser, the verb to be. Ver, the verb to see or to watch. And undoubtedly, you're going to be using all 3 of these for your project, especially the second one, the verb ser, and then more than likely the verb ir or ver when you're talking about the things you used to like to do with your family, or the things that you yourself used to like to do. Next on the agenda, we're going to watch the Gramatica video, imperfect of irregular verbs. That video is about 4 minutes long, and then we'll do the practice quiz that's at the end of the video in your notebooks and probably on your whiteboard as well. So those of you guys trying to follow along at home, you can access that video here where it says Gramatica video. And then we're going to do the guided practice exercises 16 and 17 on pages 196 and 197. And then we'll finish off with your homework, exercise 18, page 197. For those of you guys watching this video for instructions on the homework, you can skip toward the very end of this video. For exercise 16, Ana María recuerda los veranos que pasaba en Boston. Completa su descripción con las formas apropiadas del imperfecto de los verbos ir, ser, and ver. So one of the more challenging exercises that we will have done. Again, really from here on out, we're doing exercises, concepts that pertain to Spanish 3. So if it's feeling a little difficult, that's great. We're a level above where we really are supposed to be for Spanish 2. So essentially filling in these blanks with the imperfect form of either ir, ser, or ver. So there's really 2 steps then. The first step is to figure out which one of these 3 verbs to use according to the context, and the second step is to conjugate that verb according to the context. So we're going to do the first 3 together, and then I'm going to have you do the rest on your own. Cuando blank pequeña, me encantaban los veranos. So we're looking for context clues to figure out to use the verb to go, to be, or to see. We'll kind of highlight those, the 3 different colors there. So for the verb ir, it's probably going to be associated with a place, right? To go someplace. Or with another verb to say what you are going to do in the simple future. So our context clue for the verb ir is a location. For the verb ser, the verb to be, your context clue is going to be an adjective, describing what something used to be like in the past. For the verb ver, it's going to be some sort of event or movie or television program, something that you're watching, right? Like a television program, un programa de televisión, un partido de béisbol, for example. This particular example is talking about a baseball game. So for number 1, the verb that's going to be used is the verb ser, because pequeña means small or little. That's an adjective. And we know that for number 1, we're going to be speaking in the yo form because of me. Me encantaban. I used to love the summers. That's what she's saying here. So she's recalling this in the first person, right? The yo form. And the yo form of ser, if you go back up to your notes, is era. Era in the yo form, and we know that because of the expression me encantaban, like me gusta is I like, right? Yo form. And then we know the verb ser because of the descriptive adjective pequeña. For ir, it's going to be a location or another verb. For ser, it's going to be an adjective. And for ver, it's going to be an event or some sort of media program. Cuando era pequeña, me encantaban los veranos. When I was little, I used to love. Me encantaban. I used to love the summer times. All of this in the imperfect, right? Vivíamos en Boston. We used to live in Boston, donde mi papá y yo blank al famoso estadio de béisbol. Famoso estadio, for sure famoso is an adjective. I know that's why you might be thinking ser. But estadio is a place, right? It's a stadium. Fenway Park. So because it's a place, we're going to use the verb ir to go to that place. And if our subject is mi papá y yo, then we're going to use the nosotros form of ir, and that's how we get the correct answer, íbamos. Vivíamos en Boston, donde mi papá y yo, my dad and I, we used to go. Nosotros íbamos al famoso estadio de béisbol de las Medias Rojas. Medias Rojas are Red Sox. Fenway Park. Lastly, number 3, cada verano, nosotros blank a nuestros jugadores favoritos. Nuestros jugadores favoritos. You guys recognize favoritos. It's a cognate. Jugador, you can see the verb jugar in there. This is a noun. The noun form of jugar is players. Nuestros jugadores favoritos is our favorite players. And that's something that you watch, right? You watch your favorite players play the sport that you love. And so that's going to be the verb ver. In the nosotros form would be veíamos. So you got to kind of go slow. Step 1's the hardest part, right? Trying to figure out which verb to use. But the context clue, how to know which verb to use, usually is going to come right after that blank, right? Right after the blank. And if you're not sure what that word is, look it up. If it's a place, it's probably the verb ir that's going to be used. If it's an adjective, probably going to be the verb ser. If it's someone or something that we watch or go to see, then it's going to be the verb ver. It's exercise 16. Exercise 17 is a description of Isaac Newton, a famous English scientist, and we're filling in his autobiography with the correct form of the verb in the infinitive. And you have some options up above there. We're going to do numbers 1, 2, and 3 together, and then the rest we'll do in class together. Isaac Newton nació en 1642. Our options for numbers 1, 2, and 3 are the verb to have, tener, ser, the verb to be, decir, the verb to say, and ir, the verb to go. Blank un bebé tan pequeño y débil. Pequeño means small. We saw that in the previous exercise. Débil is in the footnote. Débil means weak. So these are adjectives describing what Isaac Newton was like as a baby. We're going to use ser for number 1. Remember, ser used with adjectives. And since we're talking about Isaac Newton in the third person, if you look back on page 196, the third person singular of ser would be era. Él era un bebé tan pequeño y débil que los médicos blank que no blank a tener capacidad mental para hacer cosas importantes durante su vida. When he was born, he was so small and weak that the doctors said, or the doctors go, that he wasn't going to have the mental capacity to do important things when he was little. Number 2 would be the verb to say. Right? The doctors said or concluded. The verb decir. It's a regular IR verb. So you're going to drop the IR. And since we're talking about los médicos, then you're going to use the ellos form, right? Talking about them, they being the doctors. Number 2 would be decían. Remember, IR ending, ian. Decían que él no. And remember how we were talking about for exercise 16, your context clues for ir are either a location or a verb, because ir can be used with another verb, as we saw at the beginning of chapter 1b, to talk about things that we are going to do. Ir followed by another verb in the infinitive is what we call the simple future, right? To say what we're gonna do. We can do the same thing in English. I'm gonna, or I'm going to study abroad, go to university, serve in the military, right? Ir plus another verb, and that's what we're seeing here on page 197, where it's ir comes first and then another verb in the infinitive. So your answer for number 3 will be the verb ir, and ir in the imperfect, talking about Isaac Newton, would be iba. No iba a tener capacidad mental. He wasn't going to have. Tener being the verb to have. A lot going on with these exercises. A lot of context clues, a lot of words you gotta look up. potentially use the footnotes as a guide. But let's go ahead and take a look at our homework, which is exercise 18. I think you'll find it a bit easier than the first two exercises. ¿Y tú qué dices? Are questions that are asking, how about you? What is your opinion in response to these questions? You can look these up on Slader and copy and paste the answers. I'll have that pulled up. And if I see that, I will give you an automatic 0 as you are plagiarizing, copying work that is not your own, and then pasting it and claiming it as yours. That's plagiarism. You'll get an automatic 0, plain and simple. Please don't use Google Translate. That's also plagiarism, or the translation feature in Spanish Dictionary. Copy and paste. That is also plagiarism. Do your best, y'all. Give me a perfect effort, and you'll get a perfect grade as a result. En la escuela primaria, ¿cómo eras? This question's asking, what were you like in elementary school? This is a question for your project. Take a look at your warm-up from a couple weeks ago. You have a response. Yo era is how you would begin, or en la escuela primaria, yo era. And then give me some adjectives. Yo era pequeño, atlético, y sociable. Give me 3 adjectives to describe yourself. ¿Qué clases te interesaban más? What classes were you interested in the most? Me interesaban más. Just change te to me. And then list the classes you liked. Me interesaban más las matemáticas y la ciencia. Give me a couple classes that you liked when you were a kid. Y ahora, ¿qué clases te interesan? So some of these questions are going to be in the present tense, using a little bit of both. Imperfect, you can see the imperfect ending there. Present, talking about right now. Ahora means now. Ahora, ¿qué clases te interesan? Ahora me interesan. You're going to start just like the second part to number 1. Ahora me interesan español, inglés, y historia. All right, give me a couple classes that are of interest to you now. Number 2, de pequeño, ¿te gustaban las ciencias? When you were a kid, did you like science? De pequeño or de pequeña, sí, me gustaban las ciencias. De pequeño, de pequeña, no. No me gustaban las ciencias. ¿Qué experimentos hacían tus compañeros de clase y tú en la escuela? This question's in the ustedes form, so you're going to respond in the nosotros form. Mis compañeros y yo. Compañeros means companion or classmate. Mis compañeros de clase y yo hacíamos experimentos de. You might need to look up some vocabulary. What kind of experiments did you do? Hacíamos experimentos de química, chemistry. Experimentos de arte, some art experiments. Experimentos de plantas, plant experiments. Experimentos de física, physics experiments. Whatever kind of experiments, you can look up that type of experiments, that word, and put it at the very end. Hacíamos experimentos de lo que sea. Y ahora, ¿qué experimentos hacen en sus clases? What kind of experiments do you do now? Ahora, nosotros hacemos, present tense, yeah? Page 9, if you need to look up those present tense endings. Ahora, nosotros hacemos experimentos de forensicas, forensic experiments, robóticas, robotics experiments, whatever. Look it up in the dictionary to find that particular word. All right, last one, y'all, number 3. De niño, ¿en qué pensabas más? When you were little, what did you think of more? Los estudios, your studies. Los libros, books. Los deportes, sports. o los juguetes? Toys. Where did your mind wander when you were a kid? De niño, de niña, yo pensaba, change the ending from abas to aba, if you're talking about yourself. Yo pensaba más en los libros, if you love books. Yo pensaba más en los deportes, if you love sports. Or pick something else, if one of these doesn't fit. Y ahora, ¿en qué piensas más? And now, what do you think about the most? Ahora, yo pienso, right? Present tense. O, as, a, amos, an. Ahora yo pienso más en los estudios. You can pick whichever one fits for you. And that is your homework. Thank you for your patience. Going through those together. Exercise 18, page 197. Submit those in Canvas. And I will see you all again next class. Ciao.